The hidden flame. Some stories begin with noise, loud moments, bright flashes, battles in the open, but this one begins with silence. This is a story about a girl most people overlooked, a girl who walked the halls of her new school with her head down, her voice quiet, and her presence small. Her name was Amara James. She didn't wear confidence like a shield. She didn't need to, because within her, beyond the hoodies and the soft footsteps, burned something ancient, something disciplined, something passed down through generations like a whispered secret. She never wanted to stand out, but fate and the cruelty of others had different plans, and in the end, the very thing she tried to hide became the very thing the world would never forget. And so it began on a rainy Monday morning as she stepped off the school bus, hood up, eyes down, into the cold halls of Harrison High. A new girl in a cold town. The rain came down in steady sheets, cloaking the small town of Elmswood in a dull, gray melancholy. As the yellow school bus screeched to a halt, a lone figure stepped down onto the slick pavement, hood pulled over tight braids, shoes splashing in shallow puddles. Her name was Amara James, and today was her first day at Harrison High. No one noticed her at first. She moved like a shadow, silent and careful, her eyes lowered, her steps deliberate. The school building loomed ahead like a fortress, cold brick and chain, link fencing, its windows glowing faintly in the gloom. Amara clutched her backpack tighter and entered. Elmswood wasn't like Atlanta, where life buzzed and diversity thrived. Here everything felt slow, narrow, suspicious. In the hallways, eyes lingered on her longer than necessary, some curious, some dismissive, a few already hostile. She was the new girl, she was black, and she was different. Teachers greeted her with forced cheerfulness. Students offered empty stares. No one sat beside her in class. No one spoke to her at lunch, but she didn't flinch or frown. She'd seen this before in other towns. Silence was survival. What no one knew, what no one could have guessed, was that the quiet girl with the downcast eyes had once broken cinder blocks with her bare hands before breakfast. She had balanced on one leg in freezing rivers, meditating for hours under the watchful eye of her grandmother, Mama Ruth, a woman who once trained beside warriors in Okinawa. But none of that mattered here. Amara didn't want attention. She just wanted to survive the semester unnoticed. She didn't know yet that trouble had already noticed her. When the predators smell prey, the first encounter was almost cliché. In the hallway outside the science lab, Amara fumbled with her locker combination. She could feel them watching, 3 boys leaning against the opposite wall, snickering like hyenas. The leader, Brandon Cole, was a senior with a mean streak as long as his football record. Tall, broad, and arrogant, he had a reputation for pushing people until they snapped. Most kids just broke. Brandon stepped forward with that swagger bullies are born with, his grin lazy and cruel. Nice shoes. You steal those off a scarecrow, he said loud enough for the hallway to hear. His sidekicks, Malik and Jace, howled with laughter. Amara didn't look up. She closed her locker calmly and turned to leave. "Oh, we got a runner," Brandon smirked, blocking her path. "Don't be rude, we're just trying to get to know you." Amara's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She moved to sidestep him. Malik stuck out his foot. Her bag tumbled from her shoulder, books scattering across the floor. The laughter grew. Students passed by without stopping. Some glanced over and looked away quickly. Harrison High had its unspoken rules. Brandon's crew was untouchable, and interference meant becoming the next target. As Amara knelt to pick up her books, Brandon leaned in close and whispered, "Thought you could hide here, huh? You'll learn your place soon enough." She paused for half a breath. Her knuckles whitened around the book in her hand, but then she stood, head bowed, and walked away without a word. The boys laughed louder. They thought they had broken her. They thought she was weak. They had no idea they had just pulled the pin on a sleeping grenade. The calm before the storm, the days that followed, were quiet on the surface. Amara moved through the halls like mist, silent and unnoticed, but never unaware. She could feel the laughter behind her back, the whispers when she passed, the sideways glances waiting for a crack in her calm. Brandon and his crew had made her their new hobby. They didn't need a reason. She was different, and that was enough. Every day, it escalated in subtle ways: a spilled tray in the cafeteria, a shove in the crowded stairwell, a cruel note left in her locker folded neatly like a gift. Amara never reacted. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. Each taunt, each shove, each petty assault was measured in her mind, recorded, catalogued, and stored. Her grandmother had taught her that emotions were like storms, powerful but dangerous if unleashed too soon. The true strength of a warrior wasn't found in how fast they struck, but in how long they could wait. But still a part of her itched, an old instinct buried deep, a tiger in a cage, and with each passing day the bars began to rattle. No one at school knew she practiced kata in her bedroom each morning before sunrise, that she meditated nightly, breathing through anger and pain until the noise inside her turned to stillness, that her hands, small and elegant, were capable of breaking bone if pushed too far. They thought she was afraid, they thought she was alone, they had no idea she was coiled like a spring, not broken, just waiting. The bloodline they didn't know 2 streets over from Harrison High sat a modest white house with a wraparound porch and wind chimes that sang softly with the Georgia breeze. Inside lived Mama Ruth James, Amara's grandmother. To most, she was just another sweet elderly woman who baked sweet potato pie and wore long flowing dresses. But behind those gentle eyes lived the spirit of a warrior. In her youth, Ruth James had been a legend in martial arts circles. Trained under the formidable Master Kenjiro Tanaka in Okinawa, the only woman of her time to earn a 5th degree black belt before age 25. She had taught U.S. operatives, competed in underground tournaments in Asia, and was known across continents by one title, the Steel Lotus. That legacy lived on through Amara. Her parents, both lost to a tragic accident when she was 6, had left her in Ruth's care. From that moment, Ruth had raised Amara not just with love, but with purpose. She had trained her in silence, in humility, and in control, not for violence, never for ego, but to be ready when the world eventually showed its claws. "People will try to break you, child," Mama Ruth had said one morning, handing Amara her first white belt. "But the fire in your bones was not meant to flicker, it was meant to burn." Amara wore that fire like armor. But she had kept it hidden all these years. She hadn't wanted to be the girl who fought. She wanted to belong, to be seen as normal, to avoid the cycle of conflict her grandmother had walked through for decades. But peace doesn't last forever, and some lessons, no matter how deeply buried, find their way back to the surface. Brandon and his crew weren't just bullies anymore. They were testing limits, and the moment was coming when Amara would stop letting them. When that moment came, they would find out who she really was, not just the quiet new girl, but the granddaughter of the Steel Lotus. Trained in the shadows, Amara's earliest memories didn't come from playgrounds or cartoons. They came from the dojo floor, the scent of polished wood, the creak of old floorboards beneath bare feet, the rhythmic sound of breathing in silence. That was her childhood. While most little girls were learning nursery rhymes, Amara was learning how to fall without breaking, how to strike without rage, and how to breathe through fear. Her grandmother, Mama Ruth, had transformed the basement of their small home into a sacred space. No mirrors, no trophies, just tatami mats, bamboo poles, and the echo of discipline. Ruth trained Amara in secret, not out of shame, but out of wisdom. The world fears what it doesn't understand. She'd said, wrapping Amara's tiny hands with cloth. Let them underestimate you. Power is quieter than noise. By age 9, Amara could balance on one leg for hours. By 12, she could disarm an attacker twice her size. She learned pressure points, joint locks, the flow of energy through the body. But more than that, she learned control, the kind that could diffuse a fight before it started. Outside the dojo, Amara lived like any other girl. She wore headphones on the bus, read manga in her room, and danced alone when no one was watching. But underneath the soft hoodies and quiet demeanor lived a warrior her classmates would never suspect. She had trained in the shadows her whole life, not for glory, not for revenge, but for the moment she would need it. That moment was coming, and it was coming fast. Cornered in the alley, it happened on a Friday. The sky was already dimming, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalks as Amara walked home alone. She had her hoodie pulled over her head, backpack slung tight, earbuds in. But she still heard them, the footfalls, the muttered laughter, the sound of teenage arrogance creeping behind her like a pack of wolves. She turned down a narrow alley between the back of the school gym and an abandoned warehouse, a shortcut she'd taken a dozen times before, but this time the echo of her steps wasn't alone. She reached the middle of the alley when they appeared. Brandon, Malik, and Jace, blocking the far exit, grinning. "Well, look who's lost," Brandon said, tossing a basketball between his hands like it was a weapon. "You keep walking around like you own the place. Time for a little lesson." Amari pulled out her earbuds. Her heart didn't race, her hands didn't shake. She simply looked at them. Jace moved to her left, Malik to her right. They weren't just playing around this time, they meant to intimidate her, maybe worse. Brandon stepped forward. "What? You got nothing to say again? That quiet act getting old?" He shoved her hard. She stumbled back a step, not from impact, from choice. There was a pause in the air then, something invisible but heavy. The kind of silence that comes before lightning cracks. Amara exhaled once, slowly, then she dropped her backpack and spoke for the first time that week. "I'm giving you one chance," she said, voice low but clear. "Walk away." Malik blinked. "Man, is she serious?" Brandon laughed. "Or what? You gonna cry?" Amara's foot shifted half an inch, her body angled, calm but ready. They had no idea. They thought they had prey trapped in a corner. They didn't know they had just walked into a cage with a lion. The awakening strike. Brandon lunged first. Predictable, aggressive, full of arrogance. A charging bull expecting the target to flinch or fall. But Amara didn't flinch. She shifted her stance, not wide, not flashy, just enough. She stepped inside his reach and let his momentum do the rest. One fluid motion, her shoulder dropped, her foot pivoted, and her hand caught his arm. With a sharp breath and a flick of her hip, Brandon's towering form flipped through the air and slammed onto the concrete with a sickening thud. The alley fell silent. Malik's jaw hung open. Jace blinked like he was watching a glitch in the Matrix. Brandon groaned on the ground, clutching his back, confused and winded. His ego had hit the pavement harder than his body. Jace recovered first, rushing her with a loud shout. Floppy, wild, the kind of move a street fighter thinks might scare someone. But Amara's calm never wavered. She stepped aside, grabbed his hoodie mid-stride and twisted. His own weight betrayed him. He stumbled forward, arms flailing, and crashed into the alley dumpster with a metallic clang. Malik froze. His fists were still up, but his confidence had drained from his eyes. "You've got one chance." Amara said again, softly, "Don't waste it." But fear isn't always logical. Malik screamed and charged. He didn't get far. She blocked his strike with a raised forearm and countered with a sweep to his legs. The alley spun for him. He hit the ground flat on his back, gasping for air. Amara stood still. Not panting, not angry, not even triumphant. She was centered. This wasn't revenge. This was self-defense, precision, control, the legacy of generations flowing through her limbs. Fear turns into respect by the time Brandon staggered to his feet, bruised and stunned. Amara was already picking up her backpack. She turned her back on them, completely unafraid. Brandon's mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came. His pride was too shattered to form a sentence. "You should be thankful I was raised right." Amara said quietly over her shoulder, "My grandma taught me to never start a fight, but also never lose one." Then she walked out of the alley, leaving 3 boys lying in the ruins of their egos. Word spread faster than wildfire. By Monday morning, Amara wasn't just the new girl. She was a legend in the making. Some called her karate queen. Others whispered about her being some kind of secret agent. Rumors flew. She knew 12 languages. She'd been in movies. She trained in the mountains with monks. She didn't correct them. She didn't need to. What mattered was that the whispers of mockery had turned into murmurs of respect. In the cafeteria where she once sat alone, now students offered her seats. Eyes met hers with admiration, not pity. The bullies who once hounded her wouldn't meet her gaze. Brandon walked with a limp for a week and never spoke her name again. But Amara didn't bask in it, she didn't boast, she stayed quiet, because real strength didn't shout, it didn't need to, and deep down Amara knew this wasn't just about one alley or one fight. It was about never being small again. It was about honoring the warrior within, and the legend behind her name. The legend echoes through the halls by midweek. Harrison High was buzzing. No announcements were made, no teachers addressed it directly. But everyone knew. Classroom conversations paused when Amara walked in. Lockers opened slower. Even the seniors, the ones who once laughed at her silence, now stepped aside in the hallway. It wasn't just fear. It was respect, the kind that came from seeing something real, something powerful that couldn't be denied. She hadn't boasted, hadn't bragged. She hadn't recorded her fight or posted it online like so many others would have. Her silence made the story louder, and the story kept growing. I heard she's trained by a retired Navy SEAL. And no, her grandma was like some underground tournament champion. She did a spinning kick and knocked out 2 dudes at once. Amara ignored the noise. She didn't correct them, she didn't care, because the truth wasn't in the rumors. It was in the way people looked at her now, not as a target, but as someone who had power. And the restraint not to use it recklessly. That was what truly unnerved them, that she didn't fight for attention or revenge. She fought because she had no other choice, and even then she held back. She moved through the halls like someone carrying a hidden flame. Some admired her, some feared her, but no one doubted her anymore. She had become more than a name on the attendance sheet. She had become a legacy in motion. Returning to the dojo that evening, the sun cast long golden rays through the windows of the old house on Juniper Street. Mama Ruth stood barefoot in the dojo downstairs, adjusting her belt with practiced ease. She hadn't worn her gi in weeks, but tonight felt different. She looked up as the door creaked open. Amara stood there, her expression unreadable. She was dressed in training clothes, worn, familiar, like a second skin. "I think I'm ready again," Amara said. Mama Ruth smiled. It wasn't just pride. It was recognition. The girl who once asked, "Do I have to fight?" had returned, not because she had to, but because she chose to embrace what was already within her. They bowed, and then they moved. The soft shuffle of feet on mats, the controlled breaths, the ancient rhythm of kata. A conversation without words, passed down from teacher to student, generation to generation. No spectators, no enemies, no noise, just a girl and her grandmother moving as one, masters of their own rhythm. As they finished the final form, Ruth walked over and placed her hand on Amara's shoulder. "You've stepped into who you were always meant to be," she said gently, "but remember, your greatest strength was never your fists. It's your discipline, your heart." Amara nodded. "I know. That's why they lost, not because I was faster, but because they never trained their spirit." They stood in silence. Outside, the wind chimes danced. Inside, a legacy lived on. The dojo lights stayed on just a little longer that night, and somewhere in the heart of Elmswood, a new legend had already taken root. In the quiet girl who didn't just fight back. She rose, the rise of quiet power. Amara James didn't ask to be tested. She didn't fight for fame, applause, or vengeance. She fought because she had to, and when the moment came, she rose not in rage, but in control. Precision, honor, the values passed to her by a woman whose legacy shaped generations in silence. She walked away from the alley not as a girl who won a fight, but as one who reclaimed her name. By the time Monday came, the halls of Harrison High would never look at her the same again. But she never looked for validation. She returned to her roots, to her training, to the quiet dojo that raised her, and there, alongside her grandmother, she stepped fully into her power, not loud, not flashy, but strong, steady, unshakable, because in the end, true strength doesn't shout, it moves in silence, just like Amara James, the girl they thought was weak, until the world finally saw who she really was.